This is Federalist 10, Part 5. A republic, by which I mean a government in which the scheme of representation takes place, opens a different prospect and promises the cure for which we are seeking. See, he's going to define a republic. And notice when he says a scheme nowadays has a bad meaning, but here he's not meaning it like that. Here he means the shape of representation. It's fashion, it's formed based on representation. Let us examine the points in which it varies from pure democracy, and we shall comprehend both the nature of the cure and the efficacy which it must derive from the union. The two great points of difference between a democracy and a republic are, first, the delegation of the government in the latter to a small number of citizens elected by the rest. Secondly, the greater number of citizens and greater sphere of a country over which the latter may be extended. The effect of the first difference is, on the one hand, to refine and enlarge the public views by passing them through the medium of a chosen body of citizens whose wisdom may best discern the true interest of their country and whose patriotism and love of justice will be least likely to sacrifice it to temporary or partial considerations. Under such a regulation, it may well happen that the public voice, pronounced by the representatives of the people, will be more consonant to the public good than if pronounced by the people themselves, convened for the purpose. On the other hand, the effect may be inverted. Men of factious tempers, of local prejudices, or of sinister designs may, by intrigue, by corruption, or by other means, first obtain the suffrages and then betray the interests of the people. The question resulting is whether small or extensive republics are most favorable to the election of proper guardians of the public weal, and it is clearly decided in favor of the latter by two obvious considerations. Remember, here we mentioned Montesquieu in his book Spirit of Laws. He said a republic should be in a contracted area, in a small area. He used the word contracted. It's a small area. But Madison here says, no, a republic, it's actually better in an extended area. And he's going to give the reasons why. In the first place, it is to be remarked that however small the republic may be, the representatives must be raised to a certain number in order to guard against the cabals of a few, and that however large it may be, they must be limited to a certain number in order to guard against the confusion of a multitude. Hence, the number of representatives in the two cases not being in proportion to that of the constituents, and being proportionally greatest in the small republic. It follows that if the proportion of fit characters be not less in the large than in the small republic, the former will present a greater option and consequently a greater probability of a fit choice. In the next place, as each representative will be chosen by a greater number of citizens in the large than in the small republic, it will be more difficult for unworthy candidates to practice with success the vicious arts by which elections are too often carried, and the suffrages of the people, being more free, will be more likely to center on men who possess the most attractive merit and the most diffusive and established characters. So he says, when the district is large, we're going to find people that are much better. He uses the word refined characters, as if you're filtering the bad people out. So he says, the bigger the area, the more knowledgeable the person has to be with the wants and needs and interests of different people in different parts. So he's going to be more reasonable. He's going to choose the middle way. He's not going to be radical in one way or another. So he's bringing our attention to that. It must be confessed that in this, as in most other cases, there is a mean, on both sides of which inconveniences will be found to lie. By enlarging too much the number of electors, you render the representative too little acquainted with all their local circumstances and lesser interests, as by reducing it too much, you render him unduly attached to these and too little fit to comprehend and pursue great and national objects. The federal Constitution forms a happy combination in this respect, the great and aggregate interests being referred to the national, the local, and particular to the state legislatures. The other point of difference is the greater number of citizens and extent of territory which may be brought within the compass of Republican than of Democratic government. And it is this circumstance principally which render factious combinations less to be dreaded in the former than in the latter. The smaller the society, the fewer probably will be the distinct parties and interests composing it. The fewer the distinct parties and interests, the more frequently will a majority be found of the same party. And the smaller the number of individuals composing a majority, and the smaller the compass within which they're placed, the more easily will they concert and execute their plans of operation. Again, he says, in a small place, a small group can get together, come up with a plan, and oppress the minority. Do something that is awful for the minority. Here again he says, extend the sphere and you take in a greater variety of parties and interests. You make it less probable that a majority of the whole will have a common motive to invade the rights of other citizens. Or if such a common motive exists, it will be more difficult for all who feel it to discover their own strength and to act in unison with each other. Besides other impediments, it may be remarked that where there is a consciousness of unjust and dishonorable purposes, communication is always checked by distrust in proportion to the number whose concurrence is necessary. So make sure you look at this website and look at Federalist number 10, and it gives you paragraph by paragraph analysis. And as I've said, these two books will help you. This one, you definitely read the whole book. It's a good book. This book, read chapters 2 and 3 at least. It will be very valuable in understanding the Federalist Papers and the Founding Fathers and the atmosphere and their intellectual influences.